A warning message to say we're underway. Yep, that's good. Okay, so normally I'd ask you to mute your microphones while you're not talking, but again, as there's just the two of you, that's not going to be an issue. No problem at all. So hello and welcome to this IsleVote21 online meeting for the Isle of Wight County Council seat of Ventnor and St Lawrence. A brief word for the benefit of the public. IsleVote21 has been formed with the sole purpose of enhancing democracy by providing an unbiased platform for candidates. We have no affiliations or funding, and no candidates are aware of what questions will be asked today, although a list of topics was distributed in advance to enable candidates to prepare. All 138 candidates in this year's election have been invited either directly or via group or party leaders. The following candidates have been invited to this meeting. They are Gary Peace for the Conservatives, Steve Cooper for Labour, Graham Perks, Vectis Party, Mark Jeffries, the Ireland Independent Network, who did give apologies that he wasn't able to attend the meeting, and Phil Warren, representing our island. On my screen, he's on the left. You may be on the right when it comes out on the video, I'm not sure. Would that just give away quickly, Phil?
Sorry? Oh, I'm here, yes.
Great, excellent, thanks. And Martin Godden, who is representing the Freedom Alliance. You're the only person for that party or that description standing in the elections.
I know.
Okay, so Phil and Martin are here. We'll draw lots to see who goes first. So I have two pieces of paper in my hand. Martin, would you like to choose my left hand or my right hand?
I'll go with the left.
Right, my left hand is you'll go second. So Phil, if you'd like to start off with your statement. Martin, when we come to summing up, you'll go first on the summing up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll alternate on the questions as best I can remember exactly what we're doing. So Phil, the floor is yours.
Right, thanks very much, Chris. And first of all, thanks to Stephen Cockett for organising the opportunity for us to be present. About myself, Ventnor resident since 2017 and an Isle of Wight resident since 2006. Perhaps my career experience may be of interest. I've worked in the NHS, practicing my specialist subject in pathology services, and then taught it for 20 years in higher education. So this has given me a good working knowledge of both the NHS and higher education, and also employability of students that have followed a vocational qualification route. I have experience of being a Ryde Town councillor between 2000 and 2017 in Ryde, and was deputy mayor during my final year. Roles included planning. I was an active link with Ryde Business Association, and I chaired Ryde in Bloom, which I thoroughly enjoyed because I like growing things. But it's given me a practical experience of council processes and allowed me to engage fully, not only with the community, but also with the business community, both equally important. I was also a governor at Greenmount Primary School and Ryde Academy, so I've got a good working understanding of pre-18 years education from early years to A-level and BTEC, including special education needs provision and student wellbeing and safeguarding. I believe strongly in the principles of localism, where community voices are heard and then used to inform decision making. I believe this is essential because it gives a strong sense of ownership, and it's a key to success at all levels. And I believe firmly, as does our island, this is a fundamental in our philosophy of principles. There's no place for national party politics at a local level, and an alternative is possible, as demonstrated by flat pack democracy, where it's been applied. And I believe in transparency and working on facts.
Thank you. Martin.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I'm actually standing on one issue, and that's the issue for freedom, which is represented by the Freedom Alliance Party. Regarding locality, I've lived in Ventnor since the age of 3 for 55 years. and I now live a couple of miles away. I'm not interested in politics. I've never been involved in politics, but I've watched in despair as I've seen my country reduced virtually to a totalitarian state. I've seen our basic rights and freedoms stripped away. Nobody has stood up and opposed this. I was born in 1944. My parents' generations fought for my freedom. And if I do not do something for the freedom of my children and my grandchildren, I will have dishonored them. We have a government that is just ruled by fear. Fear of a virus, which in fact, there is a 99% plus chance of surviving. Every dictatorship rules by fear. I just cannot stand by and watch children going to school in masks, children having to stick a swab up their nostrils near to their brain cavity. This government has used COVID-19 as a smokescreen to impose a totally different agenda. And I will fight for that, and I will fight for my children and my grandchildren and for their freedom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So, Martin, well, we'll give you the first question then, as Phil started. So, do you have specific projects in mind that you would pursue in the council? I'll read the questions twice to give you a chance to let it percolate through. Do you have specific projects in mind that you would pursue in the council?
If I was in the council, I would do everything I can to stop all these restrictions on our freedoms. That's my one issue, and that's what I would fight for.
Does the council have the ability to go against national legislation and laws? The decisions are made at a government level, they're put into legal effect. What powers does the county council have to vary those to go against what they've been told to do by a lawful government?
The power of courage and the power to say no. And if you're going against the government, so be it.
Okay. I'm not sure I can develop that much more than that.
No, I know.
You know, I mean, I suppose you could extend that by saying, if let's say it's another law, a different law is brought in. Let's say it's about speeding, for example. Anybody over 50 miles an hour gets an automatic ban from driving. Could the county council say again, well, we're not going to have that, or does the county council have to be?
That isn't really a proper analogy, to be honest.
Well, I'm thinking of a law that's put together at national level. Can an area, you know, a county council area, the Isle of Wight, for example, say, no, we don't want anything to do with that law, and yet the rest of the country?
At the moment, all these restrictions are based on the Coronavirus Act 2020 that went straight through Parliament, never went to the House of Lords, was never debated. And the vast majority of the restrictions that are coming out are under the Public Health Act 1984 and just issued by a minister. It doesn't go through Parliament, it is not debated. A law about restricting speed limits and so on would have to go through a proper procedure. None of the restrictions have been properly debated, and it is virtually government by decree.
Okay. Right, Phil. So the question was, do you have specific projects in mind you would pursue in the council?
Yeah, one thing that I would actively pursue is following up from the principle of the climate emergency that was declared by the Isle of Wight Council in July 2020. I feel that this must be fully enacted, but currently it seems to be on a back burner. And I'm a strong advocate for preservation of our islands, areas of outstanding national beauty and green spaces, and also for promoting the use of greener energy in a greener economic model. So it seems rather a large remit, but very often it's difficult to unpick things, so it's just one thing only. But my focus would be to try and promote the enactment of the principle that was declared regarding the climate emergency. I recognise that what we hand on is to our further subsequent generations, to our children and grandchildren. We should leave this place in a better place for them, not a worse place. I know it's a general answer, but it's working on something that has been proposed and needs to be forwarded.
Well, we have the COP26, as it's called, coming up later this year in Cornwall, that the government is hosting. We're hosting. There's a minister, I think, has been given responsibility for that. So it's an absolutely valid point for any local authority to work on, without a doubt, because there are certain things local councils can do to improve climate, decisions they can make. For example, a lot of discussions we've had have been around transport and around buses, what you can do to get people off the roads and into more environmentally friendly modes of transport.
Yeah. So I know you're going to ask me specific questions on Ventnor later.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the tidal energy scheme might come up. There's a proposal by Perpetuous to generate electrical energy using wave power, and to bring the cable on shore close to Ventnor. And there are conflicting views amongst the public, the voting public. My view is that needs to be taken forward to be regarded as a serious proposal, but there are alternatives that the energy produced could be used offshore to produce hydrogen by electrolysis of seawater, and that can feed into hydrogen as a fuel and fuel cell technology that can then power local transport. I'd love to see the whole island electric in terms of public transport. That would be a huge commitment to redress the balance for the climate emergency. And it would generate jobs, it would generate apprenticeships. These are new technologies, and it would give you opportunity to our young people to aim for something, to know they can make a valuable contribution in their working lives in the future.
Martin, as we've gone down that route, did you want to expand on what Phil said? Is there something you'd like to see, climate emergency being properly declared and enacted?
I don't believe there's a climate emergency. Look after environment properly. But as regards climate, there is no climate emergency. The climate changes from day to day.
Okay. All right, let's move on to another point. We had questions from the public. We invited them to submit them to us. So we'll take two of those. What can be done to improve educational aspiration and opportunity for residents of all ages? So what can be done to improve educational aspiration for residents of all ages? Phil, if you'd like to kick us off on that one.
Tremendously important subject. It has everything to do with well-being and mental health. There are serious issues on the island because young people have limited horizons, low aspirations. In Ventnor, which looks chocolate box top perfect to a visitor, we are in the top 10% area of social deprivation in the UK. We're equivalent to Blackpool, to Glasgow, but it's completely unseen. And it's because there is such lack of opportunity. We should not just be looking at grades for qualification. We should be looking at developing the whole person. And interestingly, from my leafleting, I do have conversations on a daily basis when I go around. Very often there's messages on my phone when I get home. I've been having an interesting dialogue I can't say exactly what the development could be, a development that could support young people in addition to the curriculum. And my idea was, well, with the Duke of Edinburgh sadly passing so recently, why not have outward bound bases where the Duke of Edinburgh Award could be offered and include in the subjects that are taught in schools citizenship, self-reliance and that type of thing, rather than just satisfying grades. So it's supporting the holistic development of each individual person, and also having the opportunity to provide job opportunities and also reskill people. As I was saying earlier about the the green industries that we should be promoting, then these are areas where people need to retrain. Let's retrain people to be practically skilled and meet the requirements that are sorely needed, whether it's plumbers, whether it's electricians, whether it's new technologies. The island has always championed new engineering. If you look at the early missile development on the south coast, Black Knight, Blue Streak, if you look at thrust that was developed here, we've got industries developing composites, and I'll go back to the green energy at the moment, producing turbine blades, but there's no turbines on the Isle of Wight. So these are areas that could be developed. So it's education leading to something and supporting well-being.
Okay. Can I just take you up on that point of deprivation? Because I think many people would be surprised to hear that Ventnor is a deprived area in that sense of people, as you say, on a par with Blackpool. That does seem surprising.
Well, we are a coastal community.
Yeah.
The work is seasonal. There's no major industry apart from tourism. When you look at it, well, there's agriculture and tourism.
Bit of fishing and
Ventnor itself. So a specific question about Ventnor is rich in talent, creative people, whether they're musicians, poets, artists. We have the Fringe Festival that runs here and can attract people in. But if you measure, there are standard metrics to judge whether a country, an area is thriving or not in the country. And this is based on even does a property have central heating or not? Numbers of people who are earning an adequate wage within an individual family. Are there any earners at all within the family? And this all stacks up because there is no permanent guarantee for employment all year round. So,
okay, Martin. So, what can be done to improve educational provision aspiration for residents of all ages? I think the key there is all ages. Looking forward into U3A type university, third age, 60, 70, 80-year-olds, as well as the youngsters.
Yeah, let's get rid of this social distancing nonsense. Let's not treat each other as a biohazard, particularly in schools. Kids need to embrace each other. They need to be able to see each other. Get rid of masks, anything like that. At the moment, we are just destroying kids.
Okay, but assuming we've come out of the COVID emergency, the crisis, we're no longer wearing masks, then let's go to that. So because this is an election for 4 years or so.
No, I'm sorry, I cannot go back to that. It is so vital. This government has no intention of going back to what was normal. And that is why I'm standing. I know they're not going to.
So you don't see a time...
I cannot make that assumption unless we fight for it. Purely and simply.
So you see mask wearing continuing even when everyone's everyone's been vaccinated and the R number is 0.2 or whatever?
Let me tell you, on the R number with Chris Whitty, he gave a lecture 2 years ago, total reversing what he's saying now, but that's another issue.
We're in a different time and time frame now. Nobody knew about COVID 2 years ago. But coming back to educational provision, because I mean that's what the question was. Do you have, let's say you did get elected to the council, and you have to start making decisions about education. What would you propose on that side? Would you be looking to expand, or do you think educational provision is sufficient at the moment? There's enough opportunities?
Well, I come back to the point I said originally. Until such time as masks in schools are got rid of, continual testing of kids is got rid of, there is no point in going further on that question.
Okay. All right. Let's go to a second question then. And this is Martin, if you'd like to start with this one. We've received several questions relating to special educational needs, SENs it's often called, and autistic children, and how much parents struggle with provision for them. If elected, what will you do to champion the rights of those children? So several questions relating to special educational needs and autistic children, and how much parents struggle with provision for them. So if elected, what will you do to champion the rights of these children, if indeed you wanted to?
In that area, as much as I possibly could.
So you recognise there is SEN is an issue that needs to be.
I do, very much so.
Okay. Go to Phil then.
Right. Okay. There needs to be a levelling up really across schools in general, so that there is suitable SEN provision, and specialist teaching assistants should be available in appropriate numbers within a classroom setting. So going back to previous experience, I have seen the benefit of STAs being present in classes. I'm aware that numbers of parents would choose to homeschool, and therefore there needs to be a means for providing education, if you like, for parents how to assist their children. So it's not just what we can do in schools, but it's how we can support parents who are homeschooling as well. And by doing both, I think we're covering both possible areas.
And there is quite a level of homeschooling on the island that came up in another meeting. I forget what the numbers were, but it was reasonably high, particularly of children with on the spectrum who have autism.
With high level needs, yes. So it becomes more specialised, doesn't it, in some cases compared to others?
Yeah. So
but I think it's my impression that there is a lack of information being made available for parents how best to support their children if they are homeschooling, and that needs to be balanced.
And how about? Sorry,
I keep jumping in. It's an interesting thing as well that very often the more severely autistic children are the most creative. And great names in the past have been quite severely autistic. So we're missing out on a lot of opportunity. And also, unfortunately, a lot of children will be suffering if they're not being given adequate support and encouragement, made to feel different when they're not different.
How about at the other end of the age spectrum? So I mentioned U3A. We've got a couple of nods there. Keeping people 60, 70, 80-year-olds.
Well, I'm a great advocate of lifelong learning. I have an inquiring mind. I don't understand why other people don't want to continue inquiring and continue learning, because to me that's life. It's about enthusiasm. It's about energy. U3A is a great thing. I remember back in my teaching career, I was invited to give a talk at a U3A meeting. Trying to think exactly where it was, but I just cannot remember now. Somewhere in Surrey. But I just covered the whole of genetics and genetic testing and the ethical implications of genetic modification in the future, because these people, and it was brilliant. A couple of people came out of the audience and asked questions, and it was reviving what they'd done in the past and now generating a new interest. So yes, absolutely, never stop learning, never stop inquiring. That's my philosophy.
Okay, let's have a look at a couple of Ventnor specific questions. And Phil, you'll start off with the first one.
Right.
Read this as like a paragraph in this one. I think it makes sense. Would you be willing to facilitate the organisation of unpaid residents to offer provision to further the recognition of Ventnor as a thriving hub to live in or visit as a tourist? Examples such as regular local history walks, e.g. in Bath, whole town celebrations, e.g. Christmas tree in Bryston, friends to support families and those that are lonely. I'll read that again because I'm not quite sure I totally understand it. Would you be willing to facilitate the organisation of unpaid residents, so volunteers in another word, I suppose, to offer provision to further the recognition of Ventnor specifically, as a thriving hub to live in or visit as a tourist? Examples such as regular local history walks, as in Bath, whole town celebrations, for example, Christmas tree in Bryston, friends to support families and those that are lonely.
Yes, absolutely, I would, 100%. Why? Well, there's a bench, and I'm desperately trying to remember who it's dedicated to, a lady who lived in Ventnor, but there's an app. If you use your phone, there's a QRS code, and it will give you a full history with photographs of this person in particular. So something does exist already. Ventnor's crying out. There, as I said earlier, there's so many creative people wish to contribute. There are arts projects that are asking to come to Ventnor, and these would involve the public in a meaningful way. One would be to do with increasing tide levels, to do with global warming. I can't give details because of Purda at the moment, so I'm unable to speak in particular about detail. But yes, and I volunteer for Ventnor Enhancement Fund, for instance, going around greening up the place. There are so many volunteers, and I think one key thing about Ventnor is during the lockdown, but this happened with other communities, rallying together. So many people came together in the community to support everybody else during COVID. Manning telephones, manning doors, and making sure the right number of people were going to shops, taking delivery of pharmaceuticals prescriptions round to people's homes, rather than people coming out to collect them. It's demonstrated to me a tremendous community spirit, and there are so many people willing to contribute and not be paid. I'm one of them. It's something I always do wherever I've been, and I did in Ryde. I continue to do now in Ventnor. So absolutely, I would support that. And one extra thing that is desperately needed is an exhibition space. I'm sure visitors would appreciate it. There's a resident has moved to Ventnor who is looking for such a space, but it's something that the arts community has been talking about for a long while now. A creative space, attached workshops, but somewhere that would be attractive for visitors to look at what's being produced locally and creative.
I'd like to see a harbour and marina so I can bring my boat into Ventnor.
There is one.
Nice. Yeah, but it takes about one boat, I think.
And it is an issue at the moment. I thought you were going to ask me about the harbour or the haven.
Well, I may ask you about the harbour. Oh, yeah, I think we'll come to that in a minute. Martin, any thoughts you'd like to give us about perhaps marketing Ventnor as this thriving hub?
Well, it's strange. I grew up in a guest house, and I knew Ventnor as a kid when it was really, really thriving. The old Ventnor railway station. In fact, I used to go up there with some friends. We made a little carts. We go up there. We say to people coming off the train, if you can't carry a suitcase, put it on our cart. We'll take it to your guest house, your hotel. We get about sixpence or something for it. What I found, and this is really, really sad, I've noticed on local social media with the previous lockdown and the current lockdown, people have been posting, I've seen people in Ventnor, they're not from Ventnor, what are they doing? They're bringing a virus with them. That fear and that division is awful. There was a pub in Ventnor, which I will not name, and this was last November when it was open for a certain time. I had a look at the board outside and it said, you're very welcome, but please show that you are from the Isle of Wight. And that's what's happened. And this has been created on a policy of divide and rule. It's awful. Yeah, of course, I'm totally in favour of tourism because that's what I grew up in. It was wonderful. It really was. I remember Ventnor Beach, Blake's and Spencer's. The beach was always packed. And we kids used to go in one area, certain other kids went in another area. We'd fight them and they'd fight us, but it was wonderful.
There's certainly been a tremendous amount of them and us taking place. People accusing second homeowners of being on the island.
Yeah.
Ghost coaches, ghost hotel bookings and things like this. And on the
it has been dreadful. It really has.
Yeah.
And of course, any totalitarian government will thrive on that, on dividing people.
Well, I think a lot of it was actually happening from islanders. It was this idea that the virus has been brought here by tier 4, tier 3 people.
Yeah.
It wasn't by islanders going shopping in Southampton, which was tier 3 or tier 4, going to Portsmouth. It just seemed to do a lot of divide and rule. And I think people who had been looking at social media being on the mainland were saying, well, I'm not sure I want to go back to Isle of Wight again. That's how they view mainlanders.
Very, very much so. It was dreadful. It really was. And people saying, people coming from Portsmouth, tier 3, bring it to tier 1, stay away. We don't want you. Yeah.
Mm.
Echoes of.
Well, there was a post in the Sandown Hub, and it was saying about all these holidaymakers, and somebody said, "Well, how do you know they're holidaymakers? How do you know they haven't come from the other side of the island to come down to the beach?
Precisely.
They don't wear badges. This isn't,
Well, I used to joke. I put a comment on social media saying, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're from Shanklin. Don't let them in."
Okay, Martin, if you'd like to start off on this one, so we'll give a bit more scope. What is your top priority or priorities for making improvements to Ventnor's town centre or seafront, and how would you go about it?
I have to say this is a little difficult because I'm only standing in this election on a single issue, and because to me the full restoration of freedoms is such fundamental importance that it overrides local issues. But can you repeat the question and I'll say it
Yes,
from
of course,
a personal Ventnor Nipper point of view?
Top priority or priorities, if you like, for making improvements to Ventnor's town centre or seafront, and how would you go about it?
For the town centre, I know there was a movement to try and make it pedestrianised. I don't think that's good. Doesn't help the local shops at all. It is what it is. It's still got a certain amount of quaintness, fortunately, from the days that I remember as a nipper. The seafront, I don't know. The seafront now is a lot better than it was in many ways, but I would not like to see more flats built there, to be honest. It doesn't lend itself to that. But yeah.
Okay, you talked about when you were a nipper. She's very much an Isle of Wight, my brother-in-law says, about the coming down from the train station. Now, there was some talk about reopening the line between Shanklin and Ventnor. I mean, it would cost millions. It'd be really difficult. Was that something you'd welcome, getting the that transport link working again? Hypothetically, it's going to be. I appreciate it's going to be incredibly difficult.
Hypothetically, I would have loved it. Yeah, I actually was on the last train from Ventnor to Ryde Pierhead, and it was quite amazing, really, because I was going up to Guildford at the time, and there were hundreds of train spotters on all the platforms with little microphones, getting the sound of it. Yeah, I mean, nostalgia. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, Phil, over to you. Improvements, and you can now talk about the subject you wanted to talk about.
I was just fascinated by the anecdotal evidence from Martin just then about the last trip. So Ventnor, end of the line or the last resort? Who knows which? But, yeah, I'd love to see the railway extended through here eventually, because Ventnor seems to be at times an island on an island. The bit that's at the end and perhaps overlooked. High Street, well, yes, needs uplifting, reviving, refreshing. Comments from residents I've been round freshen my mind without asking questions, but volunteered. Better parking will encourage, i.e. Not overpriced parking, so that people can come in, park and use the shops, would be greatly appreciated. One thing that I'm still slightly not annoyed, irritated or disappointed, I can't think of a word for it, is that there was 2 years ago a very large national pot of money, £90 million worth, for High Street activate. It was called the HAS project, High Street Activation Zones.
Right.
Ryde and Newport shared £1.5 million, but for some reason nobody was able to fly the flag for Ventnor so that money could come down to raise the attractiveness, because we have some wonderful shops, wonderful histories, wonderful frontages still. Anecdotally, I do recall a few years back, soon after I'd moved here, there was a small group of Americans. I was walking through the town. They'd just literally, I don't know how they'd arrived, landed in Ventnor, conversation amongst themselves. What we going to, I shan't do the American accent. What we're going to do now then? I don't know. What do you think of this place? Oh, I don't like this at all. We're going. And they left. So not sufficiently inviting, but there are things are gradually uplifting. Things are improving. With the thing about the strength of the high street is that there are individual shops, not chains, and that should be supported and encouraged. Interestingly, at the moment, I'm led to believe there are not business rates, but certainly I think people wanting to come in with new businesses should be given a starter package so that they can be up and running. What to do about the seafront? Well, I know there are early discussions going on in Ventnor Town Council about limiting traffic flow, even pedestrianising. And the suggestion has been made to pedestrianise the high street as well, but that was not successful at the time. But certainly there is a risk of hazard with cars driving rapidly along the seafront. If people could just spill out, have more tables from the frontages of the excellent restaurants along the front, then restricting during certain parts of the day would be advantageous. And one other thing about development, totally agree with Martin about not overbuilding. You can almost imagine it becoming a privatised area with too much accommodation being built. There is the area, the old amusements, which is an interesting space. It's sort of an octagonal roof. I'd like to see that put to a specific use. It's almost as if that could be, I don't know, without going into it at this stage, whether that could be acquired and used for a more suitable space for visitors to use as well.
Isn't the most amazing fish and chip shop in Ventnor?
There's one going out of town. I don't know if that's the one you mean. If I use one, it'd be up there, but I can't.
I think there's one near the front, because my son was saying when we were sailing past about taking the tender and going into Ventnor to pick up these amazing fish and chips from the shops. I think they're freshly.
There are some
That's Blake's fishery.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it was. Yeah. Did you both? Are you both
aware?
Of
I'm trying not to promote anyone above any other. Sorry. Sorry, Chris.
The Mark Steele program he did on Ventnor. Have you not listened to that?
No, it'd be brilliant. I read him a lot.
Find it. It is so funny. He talks about, they keep on banging on about their microclimate and how if you go up the hill you can see Cherbourg and all this sort of thing, and how they hate Shanklin and find it. It'll be on BBC somewhere. It is well worth a listen. I think it's called In Your Town or something, but brilliant. I think you'd really enjoy that.
I like that.
And he interviews a couple of people as well, and he says, of course you've got this wonderful microclimate. It's going on about that.
Well, we do.
Okay. Well, yes. Okay, so we'll start wrapping up now. Knowing your community as you do, what local issue would you like to address that you know is of concern to residents? Okay, so Phil, if you'd like to tackle that one. So knowing your local community as you do, what local issue would you like to address that you know is of concern to residents?
Right, a few I've touched on, so I won't go back. And just what seems to have risen to the surface most recently, discussed at the last Ventnor Town Council meeting, which is always live streamed, it's available on YouTube, is what to do about the harbour, because seaweed accumulates. Apparently in 2010 there was such an obnoxious smell that people were have I frozen?
No, you're fine. Or at least you were.
I'm back again. Hello. Yes.
I can hear you, certainly.
Right. Okay.
That's it. Yeah. You're moving now.
Right. Okay. There was such an obnoxious smell that people had to leave. They refused to stay. They turned on the heel and left the hotel. It's a problem with since the haven was constructed, that seaweed tends to accumulate. A contract for seaweed clearance is about to run out. Isle of Wight Council originally used to twin Ventnor Haven with Ryde Harbour. Ryde Harbour has been taken on by Ryde Town Council. There's going to be an issue about how and when Ventnor should take on the harbour, but it hinges on one of these. It's a huge expense to clear the seaweed. Number of residents have expressed concern about that. Some have expressed concerns about energy generation impacts on local environment at Meadowbrook, but that was something else I've touched on. So I think the harbour in particular, but it's something that, I mean, the thing that doesn't happen, sadly, is there doesn't seem to be a strong link between County Hall and Ventnor. And I'm so keen to be elected both as Isle of Wight councillor and Ventnor Town Council, so that I can make that link and make the argument strongly in order to get the results that are desired. Oh, and the other thing is, it's important to listen to the community. The solution for the harbour is to get all interested people together, the Strathans who do the seaweed clearance, the Blakes who are involved with the fishing operation. It's not that large a harbour.
No, I know.
The local community and representatives from Ventnor Town Council plus Isle of Wight Council. I'm all for getting people together and talking, for heaven's sake. Let's have clear facts. Let's discuss the facts in a non-political way, and let's come to a sensible conclusion with the advice of experts if necessary. Not recruiting consultancies, but just getting an expert into the discussions at the time.
I think if Ventnor did become a harbour-like ride, then that would bring more money in. It would bring sailors coming in. There's a distinct lack of facilities on the south coast. I mean, you've got to go around to Yarmouth. Yes. Or you've got to go around to Bembridge. So actually, Sandown would be more difficult. But Ventnor with an existing harbour, even if it's just one that takes the ground because it dries out, well, at least that would attract some boats into. Into that.
I no longer have a boat. For a short time, I did. It was a fin keel, not a fin keeler. It was the
bilge
keelers.
Yeah,
and I
that's what we've got. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have contemplated taking mine in, particularly. Too tricky. Too tricky.
Okay, Martin.
Yeah.
Special issues in Ventnor.
Sorry?
Special issues in Ventnor that people are concerned about.
I don't know. I mean, I have to speak first of all on behalf of the Freedom Alliance Party. You know, there's a decimation of small businesses. That's going to continue. That is part of the government policy under the World Economic Forum. That's beside the point. I mean, the pubs, you can't go in now because of all these restrictions. No music in pubs, nothing for the kids. In Ventnor itself, I know that social distancing. I mean, for God's sake, it's crazy, you know, and it is dehumanizing. From a personal point of view, apart from the Freedom Alliance and freedom stuff. There's no gym in Ventnor. There's nothing for youngsters, really. You've got the football club, which is great, although a couple of kids trying to redecorate the club room were fined, right? Because there's so much protest, the police in the end had to withdraw.
Yeah, remember that.
But this is a society we are now living in. We've got a rugby club. They haven't been able to play at all. I was one of the founder members of the rugby club. Played no games whatsoever.
You've got a splendid cricket club.
I never played cricket. Shame on me. Right?
It's a beautiful ground.
Yeah, well, cricket,
Steeple, isn't it?
Get social distancing with cricket. You can't scrum down, can you?
Yeah. That is such a resource. Ventnor Cricket Club. It's beautiful.
Yeah, but the rugby club, have you seen the position where that is? It would lend itself to a huge music arena or something. It's wonderful. But the kids there have never been able to play for over a year. I mean, it's crazy. But if you're a professional, of course you can. You know? Yeah. I was very sad when the boxing club folded up. That's because they couldn't afford to repair the building. Because originally the old boxing club, many years ago, used to be opposite the Wellington Hotel, and I used to actually box there, and then I boxed for Newport. Yeah. So the facilities for youngsters to be able to get rid of their energy really isn't available.
Right.
And to socially meet and dance, hug, kiss, embrace, it's not there.
Okay. So that's a question. So if you'd like to take a couple of minutes to sum up, and it's your turn first, Martin, as kicked us off.
Right. Okay. As I said at the outset, I'm not into local politics. I'm not into politics generally. I am standing because I am really frightened of what's happened to my country. We do live in a police state. Look up the definition. I've been in London and I've seen the way the police have acted there for peaceful protests. I'm ashamed well, I'm sorry that the Conservative Party representative and the Labour Party representative have not been on this programme.
Mm.
The Conservative Party has created this tyranny and it will continue. The Labour Party have acquiesced in it. So the best I can say to anybody, if you want to vote as a protest vote and to say no, 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 vote for Freedom Alliance. Otherwise, vote for one of the local parties. And thanks to Phil for actually coming on and being part of this. I'm just sorry that the other candidates chose not to.
Yeah. Martin
And
Godden,
thank you for being a host as well. And
thank you very much.
From Potter's Bar.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin Godden. Phil Warren, if you'd like to
Okay,
sum up.
thanks. Okay, thanks again, Chris, and also my thanks extended to Stephen. And I'll also, while I'm going through the thank yous, to Martin for turning up, because these sessions, and this session in particular, was the golden opportunity. It was provided for us to speak out, really, for all of us who are passionate about the future of our island and also our Ventnor community. If elected, my focus will be on listening to and working with all local groups within the community to resolve their concerns and advance both local and island ambitions, but that's from grassroots level upwards. I do not like the imposition from a national party governing how things are developed at local or island level. It has to be from grassroots upwards. My key watchwords will be about being efficient and also sensitive in the use of resources. And by that, I don't just mean financial resources. I believe that the operation of the central structure of the Isle of Wight Council needs to be streamlined. There needs to be a flatter level of management there in order to function more effectively. And I want to make that effective link, as I said, between Isle of Wight Council and Ventnor Town Council. Not just about finances, equally important, perhaps the more important resource are the people that live here and also our environment. And these both fully deserve my support, our support, and careful nurturing in some instances, particularly as we've discussed earlier, children with special needs, adult social care, people with mental health issues. Overall, the process, I feel, will be much more effective with greater power for decision being made at a local level. Isle of Wight Council has devolved responsibilities, but there's never support that flows with that level of responsibility. Ventnor has taken on assets like Ventnor Town Park, for instance. There has to be revenue generated in order to sustain and support and develop that area. So there needs to be a strong link, and I'll work based on expert advice, always seek it, work on the facts, only on facts, and provide transparency in decisions that are made by being inclusive.
Okay.
So if you agree with that, folks, please vote for me, vote for our island, and I'll be our Ventnor as well as our island.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting session. I'm going to stop recording now.
Yeah, good.
Okay.